those ideas have been imagined long before technology made them possible. And it turns out that more than 2 millennia ago, a set of very vivid Greek myths did envision how one might be able to fabricate artificial life, robots, and replicants. And they would be using what might be called biotechne, a Greek word which means life through craft. So in other words, it's what we now call biotechnology. So long before technological advances of the Hellenistic era, that would be the 4th century and onward, long before that time period allowed real engineers to make actual self-moving machines, there were ideas about creating artificial life, and they were already being explored in ancient thought experiments, in myths. From the time of Homer, at least 2,700 years ago. And automatons and artificial entities in the ancient texts about these myths were always described as beings that were made, not born. That means they were manufactured, not reproduced biologically or born like other living things. And I think that that phrase, made, not born, that's a crucial distinction between natural and unnatural, human and non-human, biological and artificial. So I'm not talking about lifeless objects that are simply brought to life by a magical spell or a god's command. I'm talking about synthetic beings that were imagined as products of technology. They were made by gods using familiar tools and materials and methods, but because the makers are gods, they achieved awesome results. Now, these automatons appeared in Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, and in other Greek myths about Jason and the Argonauts, about the firebringer Prometheus, and about Pandora, who was an artificial woman created by Hephaestus, the god of technology and invention. So tonight I just thought we would look at a few classical Greek stories and illustrations about robots from more than 2,500 years ago. Basically, these are some of the very first science fiction stories. So let's start with the very first robot to walk the earth. Now, I'm talking about mythology, remember, and that is Talos. He was a giant bronze automaton made by the god Hephaestus. The myth is very ancient. The first written mention of this and description of Talos appeared in about 750 to 700 BC in the works by the poet Hesiod. Now, Talos was a killer robot. He defended the kingdom of Crete against invaders. And Talos was able to move on his own. He was self-moving. He could march around the island of Crete 3 times a day. He was programmed to spot invaders and then hurl boulders at approaching ships to sink them. And ancient coins from Crete show Talos throwing rocks to sink ships. In close combat, Talos could heat his metallic bronze body red hot, and then he would grab up a victim, hug them to his chest, and roast them alive. So it's a real dangerous robot. This is an Etruscan mirror that shows that capability. And remarkably, we do know details about the inner workings and the power source of Talos. So he does fit a modern definition of a robot. And those details, I think, confirm his technological origins. He had a single tube or artery. It was described as a vein or artery. It ran from his head to his toe. But instead of blood, he's made of bronze, instead of blood, ichor pulsed in that conduit. And ichor is the mysterious life force, life fluid of the gods. It's what makes them immortal. So this entire vivasystem, if you will, was sealed with a bronze bolt on his ankle. All these details are very technological. Jason and the Argonauts encountered Talos on their quest for the Golden Fleece when they tried to find a safe harbor in Crete. And I hope there are some movie buffs here. This is Talos as he was imagined by Ray Harryhausen. He's He's familiar to many people today if you are a fan of the old cult movie Jason and the Argonauts from 1963. I like to compare film to myths because they're cultural dreams. That film had some unforgettable stop-action scenes. And here's another scene from that film. In the ancient myth, Jason and the Argonauts were doomed to become the next victims of Talos. And here is Talos on an ancient Greek vase. Now in ancient art, Talos was portrayed as you can see here, he's a giant bronze android. And you can compare this artist on the right, you can see the artist's technique for painting bronze armor is exactly the same as they painted Talos to look like a giant bronze man. Jason was saved from Talos by the sorceress Medea. And it was Medea who figured out how to destroy the bronze robot. She used a combination of persuasion and technology. She convinced Talos that she could make him immortal. Here she is on the vase convincing him she could make him immortal, but only if he allowed her to remove that vital bolt on his ankle. And Talos agreed to this. So he has some agency. And Medea and Jason unsealed the bolt so that his power fluid, that ichor, would bleed out. And we even have vase paintings from the 5th century BC showing Jason using a tool to remove the bolt. So Talos was imagined as made with technology, and then he was destroyed with technology. Now in the myth, they say that the ichor flowed out of the bronze man like molten lead. He toppled over and collapsed, and that was the end of Talos. The ancient Greeks depicted him as a metallic being but with human-like features. He was imagined as kind of a cyborg because he was half machine, half human. And the techno-wizard Medea, in this myth, guessed that he might have developed a kind of human-like desires. He does fear death, he wants to be immortal, invulnerable, and he could be persuaded and fooled by Medea. That's another human feature. Well, psychologists do try to figure out why we tend to anthropomorphize and feel empathy for non-living things. That's an ancient impulse. We seem to be kind of hardwired to bestow emotions and humanity on things that somehow seem alive, especially if they have a name and a backstory, like Talos did. Some of you, another movie reference here, some of you might remember the sci-fi film 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, in the iconic scene, the computer HAL, he seems most human to us when he's being deactivated by the astronaut. He tells his name, and he starts to tell his backstory, talks about his childhood memories from his childhood, and we feel sorry for Hal at that moment. In the film, Jason and the Argonauts, the bronze automaton has an expressionless face. His face never changes, but the astonishing animation manages to suggest glimmers of personality and emotions there. And here you can see in the poignant scene on the left there, as his life fluid is bleeding out, the robot struggles to breathe, he clutches his throat, and his body cracks and crumbles. And the modern film audience feels pity or sympathy for this helpless giant. And the human qualities are what make his destruction feel tragic to the audience. And that happened in antiquity as well. People felt sympathy for the robot Talos because he was tricked and killed. Well, he was just going about his job. And you can see this ancient vase painting here. This is one example of humanizing him. 2,500 years ago, they show Talos as a man of bronze. He's swooning backwards. Jason's removing the bolt. His eyes are rolling up. And the artist even painted a teardrop falling from the robot's eye. Well, in the continuing adventures of Jason and the Argonauts, that witch Medea helped Jason overcome other deadly automatons. There was a pair of fire-breathing bulls made of bronze that he needed to yoke to a plow and plow a field. These robo-bulls, of course, were forged by the god Hephaestus, again, in the myth. And he did this with the help of Medea. Medea's kind of a mythic hacker. You want her on your side. If you're, she knows how to sort of break the coding of these dancing robots. And the god Hephaestus also had a very impressive resume of artificial automatons and self-moving devices. He was a blacksmith. He's always pictured using familiar tools and materials and methods that people would have seen in real workshops and foundries on Earth. But as I said, because he's a god, his imaginary creations are just far beyond what a mere mortal could achieve. Hephaestus made a set of automated bellows for his workshop, and according to Homer in the Iliad, those bellows could blast more or less air as needed. Hephaestus forged a drone-like eagle that arrived like clockwork at the exact same time every day to torment Prometheus, punishment for stealing the technology of fire, giving it to humans. Hephaestus also made a wondrous fleet of driverless carts that delivered nectar and ambrosia to the gods at their banquets, and then returned when they were empty. These are all labor-saving devices. He made automatic gates that open and close for the heavens, the original garage doors. I think one of his most amazing inventions was a staff of life-size, lifelike women of gold, made of gold, to serve as his personal assistants. And I really wish I had an ancient picture, but these will have to do. Homer describes these golden servants as looking just like real young women. They anticipated his every need, and they were endowed, says Homer, with strength and reason, but even more astonishing, Homer says that they were equipped with all the knowledge of the gods. Now that's quite a data dump, right? You don't need that much information. But that is what amounts to a mythological version of artificial intelligence or AI. I think the capstone of Hephaestus' productions was yet another lifelike replicant. And in this myth, Zeus commanded Hephaestus to fabricate a beautiful replica of a woman. He says, I want evil disguised as beauty. And this is to punish mortals for accepting the gift of fire. And the result was a realistic fembot called Pandora. This is the original myth, not the fairy tale myth that we all know. She was designed to dazzle and entrap men and then bring misery and suffering to all humankind forever. Pandora was described by Hesiod around the time of Homer. And his description says that Pandora was an artificial young woman. She was made, not born. And there are many ancient vase paintings that illustrate the myth of Pandora. And here we see Zeus admiring Pandora before sending her down to Earth. She's a living statue, a kind of AI agent in the form of a seductive young woman. She was sent to Earth carrying a sealed jar filled with evils, and she was programmed to open that fateful jar once she got to Earth. She had one mission on Earth. And here she is on the magnificent Niobe vase. It's a really big vase, about this big. It shows her being prepared for her mission. And here's a detail. You can see she's standing stiffly like a statue. She's got an uncanny smile on her face. One art specialist says she looks like a wind-up doll about to be activated to carry out her mission on Earth. In the Greek myth, Pandora was given as a bride to Epimetheus, who was immediately enchanted by her beauty and accepted her as a bride. Prometheus tried to warn Epimetheus, his brother, don't accept this gift, don't accept Pandora into your life, but his warnings were ignored, and Epimetheus only, we hear, realized his mistake much later, after Pandora had opened the jar. Well, I think I have time for one more myth. Another ancient version of artificial intelligence, actually. In Homer's Odyssey, the hero Odysseus is trying to get home to Ithaca. He visits the mysteriously advanced land of the Phaeacians, and they're ruled by King Alcinous. We don't know where this land is, but there are several theories. They're mysteriously advanced. They have all kinds of technological wonders. The king commands a fleet of ships that require no rudders, no oars, no human pilots, no navigators, no rowers. These ships are, says Homer, steered by thought alone. And this myth seems to envision the vessels as controlled by some sort of centralized system with access to a vast data archive of kind of virtual maps of the entire known ancient world. The king boasts to Odysseus that his unsinkable ships can travel very long distances under all weather and sea conditions and return to his port on the same day. And the ships themselves, he says, they understand what we're thinking and what we want. So they know all the cities and countries in the world, and they can traverse the sea even when it's clouded with fog or mist. During storms, there's no danger of shipwreck. To transport you back to your home, he says to Odysseus, you simply tell the ship your city and country, and it will devise the route accordingly. Odysseus marvels. He's on the ship, on his way. The steady course of the pilotless ship, it's as swift as a falcon, he says, and it carries him across the sea to his home of Ithaca, the island of Ithaca. And I think the analogies are pretty striking there to GPS and navigation systems. Well, I think these myths tell us that the ability to imagine the idea of making artificial life, automatons and robots, that has more ancient roots than people realize. Robots were thinkable long before the technology was available, and the Greeks were not the only ancient culture to imagine such wonders. There are such stories from, for example, India and China. Well, I'll just conclude now. I think we live in a time of grandiose ambitions and futuristic goals, and we're on the brink of what advanced technology is making possible and making problematic. Some people think it's ironic. I live in Silicon Valley, but I'm looking to the distant past instead of the future, asking you to time travel more than 2 millennia to study what are essentially the first science fiction stories, but I think the sophistication and actually the relevance of these stories, ancient dreams of technology, I think they can enrich our understanding of that timeless link between imagination and science.